In ages past, when the earth was young, only humans roamed the land. There were no elves, no gods, no fantastical beings as we know today. The world was a place of serene beauty, filled with glorious kingdoms and cities where peace and happiness reigned. Suddenly, the sun roared across the sky, and even in darkness, a brilliant flash of light descended. A massive, fiery globe struck the earth, shaking it like a mighty earthquake. All eyes turned northward, where a towering inferno like a hurricane of fire rose into the heavens. Initially, the kingdoms and their people dismissed the strange occurrence in the north. They thought it nothing more than a fallen star, a fleeting event of no consequence. Despite the great quake that shook the earth that day, leaving a lasting mark, no further disturbances followed, and life continued as before. However, it wasn't long before the people realized the truth. The fiery globe that had descended upon the earth was no mere celestial object. It was, in fact, a fallen angel, banished from the god's celestial domain and cast down from the heavens, bringing with it an omen of change. Soon after, they learned the fallen angel was named Ahrim. This dark being sought to claim the planet as his own and exact revenge on the gods who had banished him from the heavens. He began summoning and creating creatures known as the djinn. With a relentless fury, Ahrim unleashed his djinn upon the ancient kingdoms, challenging the once peaceful realms of humanity. The ground trembled as the armies clashed, and chaos swept through the land. The djinn were towering beings, standing at least 2 meters tall, with red, fiery flesh crafted from flames and ashes. Their long, bearded faces bore dark, glowing eyes, like embers set ablaze. They knew no fear, felt no pain, and existed solely to destroy. Their eyes burned with an unrelenting hunger for chaos, making them unstoppable forces of destruction. Every group of djinn followed a towering, ominous figure, Satim, shrouded in darkness and endowed with even greater powers. Not only could he wield weapons, but he could also control the minds of humans, seeking to unravel them from within. The fallen angel, shrouded in darkness and consumed by hatred, stood atop a smoldering hill, his fiery gaze sweeping across the lands of humanity. With a voice that rumbled like distant thunder, he commanded his djinn to move against the humans. "Burn their lands, slaughter their people, leave nothing but ash in your wake," he ordered, his words seething with malice. The djinn obeyed with terrifying precision, pouring into villages and cities like a tidal wave of fire and destruction. Their fiery swords carved through stone and flesh alike, their flames reducing homes to smoldering ruins. Screams of terror filled the air as families were torn apart, their lives extinguished in a storm of ash and blood. Fields of golden wheat were set ablaze, their flames consuming the earth's bounty in moments. Livestock scattered in panic, their cries drowned by the relentless roar of fire. Rivers turned black with soot, and forests became charred wastelands. The djinn left nothing behind, not a single soul, not a single trace of life. The devastation was absolute. The once thriving lands of humanity were transformed into a barren wasteland, a grim testament to the djinn's wrath. It was this unrelenting destruction that reached the ears of the great kings of Partha and the Partins, driven by the cries of their people and the sight of their lands in ruin. As the great kings of the human kingdoms, the Parta and the Partins, mustered their forces, the earth trembled beneath the march of countless feet. The sound of swords clashing and armor rattling filled the air, accompanied by the thunderous cries of warriors shouting, "Long live the king!" They moved forward like an unstoppable tide, determined to defend their realm. The day of reckoning had arrived. The human armies stood at the edge of the battlefield, a vast expanse of scorched earth stretching before them. Across the horizon, the djinn's forces awaited, their fiery forms flickering in the growing darkness. The air was thick with ash, and the stench of burned earth, a suffocating reminder of the destruction that had already swept across the land. The humans gazed at the enemy lines, their hearts heavy yet resolute. What they saw chilled them to their core. Line after line of djinn stretched into the distance, a sea of fire and shadow. The flames of their forms danced menacingly, casting grotesque shapes across the barren land. Above them loomed the great djinn, their ominous silhouettes towering like dark gods. And at the center of it all stood the fallen angel, his presence a vortex of despair and hatred. The kings of humanity, Partha and Partins, stepped forward, their armor glinting faintly in the dim light. They turned to their soldiers, their voices strong and unwavering as they addressed the gathered armies. "Look at them!" King Daraksh began, his voice carrying over the field. "These creatures of fire and shadow have come to destroy everything we hold dear. They burn our lands, slaughter our families, and enslave our people. They would see our kingdoms fall and our names erased from history." King Samuel raised his sword high, his voice a rallying cry. "But we will not yield. We are men. We are the strongest beings ever created by the gods. It is our duty, our honor, to stand against this darkness and drive it back to the abyss from which it came." A roar erupted from the human lines, their courage reignited by their king's words. The soldiers tightened their grips on their weapons, their resolve hardening as they prepared to face the inferno ahead. The kings turned to the battlefield once more, their eyes burning with determination. And then, with a single unified command, they gave the order. The human armies surged forward, a tide of steel and flesh, determined to defend their land, their people, and their legacy. As the battle began, the armies marched toward each other, the thunder of their footsteps echoing across the battlefield. The first brave soldier stepped forward, sword raised high, and swung with all his might at the nearest djinn. But to his horror, the blade passed through the creature as if slicing through air. A stunned silence swept through the ranks as soldiers exchanged fearful glances. They quickly realized these were no ordinary foes. The djinn stood before them, towering beings of fire and ash, their forms shimmering with an otherworldly heat. These were creatures of legend, unknown to man, forged from the fiery depths by an ancient and malevolent power. Before the soldiers could recover from their shock, the djinn began their assault. Swinging fiery swords that scorched the air, they tore through the human lines. Men fell in droves, their bodies burned and broken, their screams lost in the chaos of battle. And then came the great djinn. Standing taller and darker than the rest, their presence was suffocating. With a wave of their hands and a dark mutter of incantations, they began to influence the minds of the soldiers. Brave warriors who had moments before stood firm now dropped their swords, their faces contorted with fear and confusion. Some turned their weapons upon themselves, while others fled, screaming into the distance, driven mad by the great djinn's power. Seeing the carnage unfold, the kings, generals, and leaders of the human armies watched in despair. Fear gripped their hearts as they saw their once mighty forces crumble. Realizing the battle was lost, they gave the order to retreat. The armies began to march backward in disarray, their formation broken and their spirit shattered. They fled the battlefield, their only thoughts consumed by survival, as the djinns stood victorious, their fiery forms a testament to their terrifying power.